All right, so the next big story is obvious. Donald Trump's recent trip to the Middle East, where he secured $600 billion from the Saudis, another $1.2 trillion commitment from Qatar. But what's driving the most attention is President Trump's reported interest in brokering a new framework with Iran that's aimed at easing tensions and addressing nuclear concerns. So, Anna, I know you're chomping at the bit on this one.
Yes.
Take us away.
Well, there's a really interesting divide currently taking place within the Republican Party between, I would say, the more traditional conservative Republicans that identify as neoconservatives, and then the America First MAGA crowd that does not want to go to war with Iran, or they don't want to go to war with anybody, right? So Donald Trump has softened his tone in regard to Iran. You know, he was talking about bombing their nuclear sites incessantly, by the way, and all of a sudden he's in Saudi Arabia giving a speech kind of trashing neoconservatives. Let's take a look.
Great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done.
Now, if you take what Trump is saying there at face value and you're anti-war, that was great. But it's kind of hard to believe anything Trump says because he goes back and forth so many times. Now, some argue the money he's getting from Qatar, these deals with Saudi Arabia, the $2 billion that Saudi Arabia invested in Jared Kushner's investment fund, those are the motivating factors behind Trump's willingness to engage diplomatically with Iran to get a nuclear deal rather than bomb their nuclear sites. But Trump says it has something to do with this. Take a look.
You're right. The neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And the president believes that his force of personality, the way he is going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way in the interests of the United States government, and I believe in that too.
Now, that's Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's golfing buddy, real estate investor, but more importantly, he is Trump's Middle East envoy, and he wants diplomacy from what I've gathered, from what he's been saying and doing. But there's one other factor that I want to kind of bring into this, because Trump explains that he changed his mind on potentially going to war with Iran due to a conversation he had with Qatar's Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Let's take a look.
Iran is very lucky to have the Emir because he's actually fighting for them. He doesn't want us to do a vicious blow to Iran. He says, you can make a deal, you can make a deal. He's really fighting, and I really mean this. I think that Iran should say a big thank you to the Emir, because the Emir is fighting very much that we don't. And there are many people that want me to go the other route. They say, just knock it out, because nobody can beat us. No, we have the strongest military in the world by far. Not China, not Russia, not anybody.
Now, the United States didn't do so great in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran's military is definitely more robust than Iraq's was, for instance. So going to war with Iran would not be a simple task, and it could potentially be disastrous for the American people. If it turns into a full-blown war, American soldiers could die. We should avoid war. So I love the fact that he's pursuing diplomatic means to get a new nuclear deal that'll prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. They just had their fourth round of talks. They did not reach a conclusion, but Trump says that they're getting closer. Whether you believe him or not, that's a different story. But I commend him for wanting to pursue this diplomatically.
Can
I'm
I
wondering
ask
what
you
you
guys
guys
a
think.
bunch of questions and then okay, because my first thing is, why did you brag then for the past 8 years about how your strangulation tactics have worked? That you bankrupted them, you took out Soleimani, brag, and then complete, hard 180. In addition, which we're going to get to in a minute, we know that Qatar has invested more in America than any other country, arguably, and we'll litigate that in just a moment. But I question those motives for nefarious reasons, not just diplomacy. My next question is it ideal to sideline Israel? So think about all this and then get back to me, because they weren't a part of these negotiations, and they're our top ally in the region. And then the third part is, do you really think that we can trust Iran? So we allow them to
Yeah, we had something called the JPCOA, okay? That was the Iran nuclear deal that Obama and other countries, by the way, 4 other countries had negotiated with Iran. There were checks to ensure that Iran was not enriching uranium.
But he's going to allow them to enrich uranium, though.
Huh?
He's going to allow
right
them
now
to do it.
I mean,
and then they're allowed to get to like 90%.
But there are inspectors, and
Yeah,
I'm glad
exactly.
you just played what Trump said over there. This is one of the most important things of his presidency. It's a huge change. The Trump doctrine, this is what the American people voted for. I have a chapter on him taking this position in Trump We Trust. It was one of the reasons I supported him in 2016. But then, first term, he appointed Jared Kushner president, and turns out we had to keep going around bombing everyone, like you mentioned Soleimani, which was a terrible, horrible idea. Let's just put that behind us.
Thank
This
you.
is the new Trump, and this is the uniparty against the American people. We have zero interest in going to war with Iraq. A lot of Americans will die.
Yes.
A lot. We should not have military bases around the world. We have enough trouble in our country. The anti-war left and the MAGA right should come together, because this is and he said it in that speech. A lot of people want to go to war. Oh my gosh, and that's probably why he keeps saying these stupid things about, I'm going to stand up to Iraq or Iran, because there is going to be enormous pressure on him to go to war. We have no interest in going to war.
That's my question, is the leverage of getting Iran to comply is, if you don't comply, then I'll bomb you out. Doesn't
No,
he
what's
need
happened,
that?
if I could respond to that in particular.
Please.
I used to wonder, why does Iran need nuclear power? Aren't they sitting on something else they can use for fuel? Well, yes, they can, but they export fuel. It's how they make money. So if they can get some of their energy from nuclear, there actually is a reason for them to have nuclear energy. Point 1. Point 2, every time Bush would walk away and say, no, not until you have completely dropped all of your enrichment, they would just keep enriching. And now they're on the verge of getting a nuclear bomb. If you had just negotiated with them and said, okay, you may enrich for nuclear power, but we're sending in inspectors, Obama wouldn't do it. Obama did do it. Bush wouldn't do it. Obama did it. My party went nuts. It's a better idea. Look, Pakistan has a nuclear bomb. We can't trust them. North Korea has a nuclear bomb. We can't trust them. It may be that at some point Iran gets a nuclear bomb. They're closer to it because we didn't send in inspectors. Yes. This is huge what Trump is doing.
I
this
agree.
is absolutely huge.
Totally
and
agree.
It's interesting how it didn't get that much press. It should have been a 2-inch headline at the top of the New York Times.
I agree with you that it's the most important story in the news today.
Okay.
I think that this is... Donald Trump has really changed the Republican Party. I mean, I remember the Bush years. The Republican Party was the pro-war party. And to be sure, those types of figures still do exist within the Republican Party. But to answer your question about Netanyahu and him being alienated from these negotiations, let me make clear.
I know you don't like him.
No, I despise him.
I
but
get that you
putting that
despise
aside,
him, but
I
just
can put
think-
my bias aside
Okay.
and just give you the facts, right?
Okay.
Netanyahu is the one who convinced Donald Trump in his first term to basically get rid of the Iran nuclear deal, because Netanyahu doesn't want a deal. He wants the United States to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel, just as we did with Iraq back in 2003. In the lead up to the
war with Iran the first time,
in the
though.
lead up to the war with Iraq, you had the Israeli intelligence organization coming out and saying, oh, not only do they have weapons of mass destruction, Iraq is also developing bioweapons, and oh, it's so dangerous. So they had been pushing the United States to go to war with Iraq. We did go to war with Iraq. It was a complete and utter disaster. And if you go back and you read all the details about everything that happened before that preemptive invasion, okay, you'll see very similar trends. You'll see parallels. We should not go to war with Iran. We should approach this diplomatically. I don't want soldiers to go to Iran. I don't want people to die. I want a deal, and I want us to use our resources on the American people.
I agree with you. I'm simply saying we didn't go to war with Iran the first time, and it was like, I bankrupted them. They were nowhere. Like, why not continued strangulation and sanctions? I don't trust Iran. I mean, the Sharia law, like, you're dealing
I
with
know, but
a government.
Who cares? We deal with Saudi
Guys,
Arabia and their
exactly.
monsters, and just, I think I should probably defend the war in Iraq since I was a huge supporter. So I just quickly want to say, after 9/11, I wanted to bomb the crap out of Iraq and Afghanistan. I still would. But I didn't want to stay 20 years.
I can understand.
Nobody said we're going to stay 20 years.
But Iraq had nothing to do
That's what I was
with
gonna say,
9/11. I can understand.
The idea was, and some of it worked, some of it didn't, was that we wanted an Arab Israel. A lot of these, we don't need to relitigate it, but most of the Middle East either have sane people with a crazy leader or crazy people with a sane leader. What Iraq was actually pretty sane people. We have a lot of Iraqis who have immigrated to America. They're not like, Afghans. But if you got rid of their leader, and they did wave their purple fingers, I do think Iraq is better. Was it worth the price we paid? I don't know. Maybe not. I wanted to smash someplace in the Middle East. Absolutely, Afghanistan, you were never going to nation build there. Just bomb the crap out of them and pull out.
And the Taliban was supported by the United States government. I mean, we were funding them. We were giving them weapons to prevent communism from developing, right? A communist takeover from developing in Afghanistan. That came back to bite us in the ass. And
Trump was so right saying their nation building has created disasters.
Exactly.
It has never gone the way it was supposed to.
Well, I'm particularly skeptical about the Qatar piece. And then, of course, you've got the plane, which you guys wanted to talk about. So next up, let's take a look here at the plane situation.
Told that you wanted to address the gift that Qatar is giving to the U.S. government, to the Defense Department of this jet.
I see that this story is making a big story in the news. Look, we've been always there for the U.S. We've been a reliable ally for the U.S. and it's something between the Ministry of Defense in Qatar and the Department of Defense, and it's in the discussion between them and under legal review. Unfortunately, I see that this story is taking a different direction and is being more politicized while it's a normal government-to-government deal.
All right. So basically he's saying there's no there. But I read a brilliant piece in the Free Press, Barry Weiss's Free Press. Okay, so listen to this. They pull back the curtain on how far Qatar has gone to entrench itself into American life. So over the past 2 decades, Qatar has spent nearly $100 billion buying influence across our politics, universities, media, think tanks, and Fortune 500 boardrooms. And in 2017 alone, you'll get a kick out of this, they spent $225 million lobbying and on PR in the U.S. That's 3 times more than Israel and 2/3 more than China. So my question is, like, how deep is this flowing, and when is American policy no longer made in America?
So deep. So deep. And you know what?
Guys.
They are buying our minds. They're buying the future of the American people, the future generation, because you know what? They're also buying the Ivy League. And I went to Princeton, and you could see that the influence of the Middle East was everywhere. They purchased happy hours for us, social events. All of it was just bankrolled by the Middle East.
Sorry, did you want to finish your point? Sorry.
Not only that, this is like, I want to be intellectually honest here. I am a conservative now, but this is not a good idea to use to allow Air Force One to be created by or to be gifted to us by another country. We would literally have to take the plane apart to ensure that there are no listening devices. They could be anywhere.
But they do plan on doing that. But
Right.
do you feel as if that is an indictment on Trump, though? Because to your point, he's there. He's going through all of these diplomatic talks across both sides of the aisle. We're recognizing this is a good thing. Would it really be a good standard for him to begin those talks by rejecting a massive gift from them? I mean, in any culture, it can be bad to reject gifts, but especially in those types of countries. My boss, he grew up in Dubai. He has explicitly said that would have been considered so rude if he had started off the diplomatic tour by rejecting blatantly a gift of that magnitude, and it could have impacted him.
He could have just simply said, like, this is going to give the appearance of corruption, and I don't want, the American people to think that you're buying me off. He could have rejected it in a polite way, but this is actually not just about Qatar, okay? This is a broader issue of foreign influence of our government, And, I call into question, the idea that Qatar is like the top issue here. Qatar's a problem, but Qatar's one of the countries in a whole litany of countries that have been, corrupting our politicians. I mean, just in the last election cycle, the Israel lobby spent $127 million buying our politicians. So, I mean, do you think we're sending
ideology?
Do you think we're sending
the ideology, Anna? So they have close ties.
No.
To Anna.
We got to get the corruption out.
Hamas.
You think all the foreign leaders spending $200,000 on Mar-a-Lago memberships every year are doing it?
I think it's all wrong. The only reason this
they
concerns
want to have access and
okay, go. I can
influence
see it.
the
Go.
president.
Go ahead. Go.
It's simple.
Well, I'll let you have Mar-a-Lago. I don't really see Qatar. Where is the influence? I mean, you have a quid pro quo. What are we getting? Are they influencing politicians?
Still talking.
Well, they are.
Still
Okay,
talking.
keep going.
I don't see enormous influence. You have them certainly Israel has its own influence. I don't think we care about this area of the world. I think this is part of Trump saying, we're going to do business with you. We wish you well.
Yes.
We are not going to go in, invade, try to change cultures we don't understand. And as for the listening devices, it does not matter. Trump is going to call up Maggie Haberman and tell her everything anyway. So it doesn't matter with Trump.
So I just want to say that in terms of the specific instance of influence, Qatar is the same country that Jared Kushner threatened to blockade in return for $1.5 billion of help for 666 Fifth Avenue. This is the same country.
That isn't corrupting our politics. That is corrupting Jared Kushner. And where is the prosecution? I agree with you. Where are the Democrats? You actually have something that is disgusting corruption in the Trump family, and they're just walking around. No, let's say Trump is a Russian agent. Whoa, that's way better. No, you have real corruption here. Where are the Democrats on this? Where are the prosecutors on this?
And you brought up a really good point that I also want to address. You talked about diversity of government, right? Democrats. You said like we're not going to. No, you said no. What you meant was like they're not going to go in. America's not going to go in and monitor human rights. You alluded to that, did you not, or did I misunderstand?
I didn't say anything about diversity.
Okay, well, this is what I mean. Trump is actually focused on real diversity, allowing different sorts of governments to thrive in their particular milieu. Like in the Middle East governments are not going to thrive in the United. Do you understand? Like he's not going to dwell on Jamal Khashoggi anymore. The Biden regime did.
I don't think he ever dwelled on Jamal Khashoggi.
No. For anybody who doesn't know who that is, that's the American journalist that was
Can I please finish?
Dismembered and assassinated.
In Saudi Arabia.
What I'm saying is Trump's speech was extremely significant because it signaled a new direction in American foreign policy. We are not going to police the internal affairs of different governments. That's what I mean by diversity of governments. Under democratic regimes, we are so obsessed. They are so obsessed with policing human rights violations, of saying this is wrong, this is right. You got to do things our American way. But Trump is saying it's almost like benign neglect. If you can do business with us, if you can engage in these transactions, that's great. Let's all become wealthier. Let's all strengthen our economies.
Hold on. Are we okay? Listen. If we're saying it doesn't matter that these atrocities are occurring around,
Trump doesn't give a shit.
Are we saying
Americans don't?
we should?
How about Rwanda? How about Saudi Arabia? How about North Korea? We aren't the world's policemen. And
I
by
agree
the
with
way,
that.
This is not.
We also put sanctions on that behavior.
Well, they shouldn't have.
Really?
Just leave them alone.
I
We
actually
shouldn't
agree
be
with
going
that,
around playing chess with the universe. It never works. And Trump ran on this. I don't know if you guys remember South Carolina, most military state, pro-military state. Before the South Carolina Republican primary in 2016, that's when Trump told Jeb that his brother lied us into war. It was a huge mistake. And all of it, this is one of the many times Trump was supposed to, he's done, he's finished, he's done. And then he won the South Carolina primary. People are sick of war and not producing the beautiful results. I still think the first part of Iraq and Afghanistan were good.
Not at that tight.
Yet and still, it was right after 9/11. We haven't had another 9/11. Let the rest of the world be. We have enough problems in our country. How about guarding our border?
I'm not asking to go in militaristically, but
that's what it always leads to.
Yep.
But okay, we haven't gone in militaristically, but we had sanctions on Syria, which we agreed we would touch upon. Okay, no, this guy the interim president? Is that what we're referring to him as? I mean,
Yeah, that was a great idea, by the way.
I mean,
Yeah,
can
he's
we-
so much better than
this is
Assad.
what, can we pull
Grab,
up
remove
the Tulsi
that
Gabbard clip?
leader around.
Okay, so
An al-Nusra leader, a terrorist.
Okay,
yeah.
more to
Good
my
job,
point.
foreign policy
You've
crew.
got Trump saying this guy is good-looking, strong leader, whereas Tulsi Gabbard just a few months ago in her Senate confirmation hearings was like, this guy's arguably worse than Assad. Are you happy now? Can we see
She's
that
right.
clip, Nat?
To train who they called moderate rebels, but were actually fighters working with and aligned with al-Qaeda's affiliate on the ground in Syria, all to move forward with their regime change and not acknowledging what was obvious at the time and what has unfortunately borne true, which was that a regime change war in Syria, much like the regime change wars in Iraq, the toppling of Gaddafi and Mubarak, while these are all dictators, would likely result in the rise of Islamist extremists like al-Qaeda taking power. I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It shouldn't
is
be.
certainly
and
not
I
in our
understand,
interests.
I appreciate your answer, and thank
All right,
you.
so long story short, Tulsi basically says exactly what you just said. And my question is simply, okay, you don't want to go in militaristically, I agree. I don't think that condoning it or lifting sanctions, I don't understand why we would do that. It's because we want their oil. Why are we doing this?
Because it has no effect on any American's life. Who cares who
Because
the leader of
women,
Syria
they don't
is?
march
Who's
either.
the leader?
Naked and shot
Okay,
in the
Jillian,
head.
why is
That's
the
our
leader of
responsibility.
Burkina Faso? Who's the leader of the Maldives? Why do we have to pick one enemy in the universe and convince Americans he's like Hitler, he's like Hitler? Whether it's Putin or this new leader, it was Assad. I mean, we keep playing chess with the universe. It doesn't affect any American's life.
I agree with Ann. I agree with Ann, and I
human here, guys.
Wait, but why is that our responsibility? Why do we need to be the sheriff of the entire world? I actually agree with J.D. Vance. The standard we should set is if Americans can't locate it on a map, we don't care. We just step away and figure out our own problems.
And
because,
no
frankly,
fair going to Wikipedia.
And I think,
Exactly.
I think the point that Anne's getting at, and I agree with this entirely, is every time the U.S. meddles in a foreign country's business, it backfires. So, for instance, the Grand Ayatollah and the supreme leader in Iran,
the regime change.
it wasn't just regime change. Our CIA orchestrated a coup to dispense of a democratically elected leader and essentially install a puppet government that ended up
I disagree
backfiring.
with you there. That worked beautifully until Carter abandoned him. That's what killed Iran. I mean, he was a nut. The one that the CIA deposed was a nut, and we had the Shah, and he was great. And it was, this uprising that Princeton professor said it's going to be great, and then we have our hostages taken. No, that was entirely Carter's fault.
Well, this leads to the question of Ukraine. Like, should we
Same
be spending
game.
billions of dollars
No.
on a country? Like, I actually agree with that. We need a measure of accountability, and I have very little faith in this Zelensky dude.
And who cares?
Well, here's who cares. Here's who cares.
Well,
Again,
actually, and I think I'm just arguing for the other side.
No,
I'm not
he's
saying,
not Hitler.
Wait, I'm just saying, I'm not saying I agree with it. Some people are saying we ought to care because China's watching closely. And
Who cares about China?
Well,
That's our next enemy. Oh my gosh, these China hawks are the ones driving me crazy. Let Japan deal with it.
well, okay.
It's closer to them.
Here's why I wonder about Ukraine and the regime change. Simply because, again, if I was to wrap myself in tinfoil, I don't know if any of you guys have ever read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This book is crazy.
By whom?
Gosh, I can't remember his name. Will you pull it up for me, Nat? But it's a biography. So this guy essentially worked for these global countries, and he would go into parts of the developed world, and he would sell them on how we were going to help them develop their infrastructure to access their raw materials, energy, minerals, so on and so forth. And then this small country would default on the loan, and the World Bank goes in, and they're like, uh-oh, I guess you're in debt, and we're going to need to take everything. Now, this looks strangely familiar to the fact that all of our tax dollars paid for all these bombs to the military-industrial complex. Then the World Bank says to Ukraine, hey, you took all this money. I guess you're going to have to put that farmland up for lease. Enter Monsanto, Cargill, ConAgra. What's the third resource that they have? Well, if you don't call, us making, or our global countries making money off the weapons, then our farming, big ag, takes advantage of the farmland, the minerals. And now we've struck a deal for that too. Like, again, I get that it's conspiratorial, but damn it if it didn't play out just exactly as it always does. And we were engaged.
I think we paid for those minerals with the billions of dollars we've given them against I guess,
but
Anna and my
we gave it to them in
vote.
the form of weapons. Zelensky said that to Lex Fridman on his show, and he's like, you guys didn't give me money.
Yeah, but okay, but taxpayers paid for it.
Exactly.
But we paid for it, but we aren't going to benefit off those minerals. It's going to be corporations like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street.
Capitalism, baby.
American
American-based companies want access to natural resources all across the globe. And in the past, we have pursued those natural resources through war. I think it's better to pursue them through diplomatic means.
I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
I'm simply talking about the fact that when we look the other way as atrocities occur, when do you get into a World War II situation where you've exterminated 6 million Jews? Like, where is the line? If we condone it,
It's got to be a lot closer to exterminating Jews than, and I'm sick of every world leader being told this one's Hitler, that one's Hitler. It's very rare that a Hitler is going to arise. We'll deal with it when it happens, but oh my gosh, it is not Rwanda. It is not Ukraine. It is certainly not
And do we want these
Iran.
countries as enemies, right? Like, wouldn't it be better to have that level of diplomacy, to have them as an ally versus having them against us? I mean, if there was some type of conflict to erupt where all of a sudden there was a proxy war that we needed to get involved with, don't we want to maintain diplomacy with some of these countries? Isn't that important?
I would talk
And also,
to enemies, but I would definitely define them as enemies, and I would put sanctions on them.
And Jillian,
these are atrocities that I simply can't be like. And not
This
only
is why
that,
so many people around the world, I hate to say it, but hate America. We're meddling in all these countries. Let them run. I loved Trump's speech. Let them run their countries the way their culture dictates. It doesn't make any difference to us. I don't even want to trade with them, to be honest. I want to make our own stuff here. I want to block immigration. I want to be America alone. We don't. Why does it matter to us to fiddle around with other countries?
I agree with that. I live in the city of Philadelphia. Luckily, I'm in a part that's safe. But if you just drive a few miles out, maybe 2 miles out, it's literally a war zone. Like Kensington.
Can we fix our own communities?
People are desecrating on the street.
Yes.
They're getting high, literally on the sidewalk.
does that have
We
to
don't
do with what
have
we're
the
talking
responsibility.
about?
There's a lot of suffering in America.
I would rather
and our
use-
tax dollars, I'm sick of seeing my tax dollars go toward bullshit.
I get
Okay,
it,
in foreign
Anna,
countries.
but-
I don't want my money going toward bombs. I don't want my money going toward bombing people, killing people. I want my money to make the lives of the American people better.
All right, I'm going
That's
to put
where
a
I'm
button
at.
on this in 2 seconds. My simple question is, outside of war, which I am against and agree with you both on, and it goes nowhere good, and we've seen it over and over and over in the last 50 years. With that said, could you not dangle the carrot of business with America? Stop killing women who take off their hijab. For God's sake, don't march.
Why do we need to be the DEI police of the
We've
world?
been trying that for 20 years, and guess what they're still doing?
And also-
Whipping women who take off their
and
We
hijab.
don't even maintain our American identity
Yeah,
and culture
wait.
here. How are we going to go and control and insert our identity and culture into other places?
Well,
We're
when you're-
so
when you're
overrun here in
dangling
America
in-
due to the illegal immigration.
All right.
How are we meant to go and police that in other
There's
places when
something
we can't
else.
do it
One
here?
By
final point. One final point.
incentivizing them with these business deals.
One final point, though, that we haven't yet mentioned, this also opened us to charges of hypocrisy. For example, when we talk about Tiananmen and the Uyghurs in China, you know what they're saying about us? They're saying you're the ones who are discriminating discriminating against Native Americans and Black people. That's what the Chinese are now saying about us.
Right.
20 years in Afghanistan, 20 years putting Afghan women into the police force and painting their George Floyd murals. 20 years, and at the end of it, Pew takes a survey, 99% of Afghans want to live under Sharia law. It doesn't work.
Like they want
Stop
that.
it.
It's their
Let
own
them
culture.
live
Let
the way
them
they
live.
want to live. It's not our culture. And thank God for that.
And that, my friends, is exactly what I meant about real diversity. That is the diversity we should seek. Let people be. Let these cultures be. not this DEI woke bullshit that we have going on in this country. The real diversity we want is benign neglect to our enemies and allies alike, and just let them thrive under their own government.
Thank you so much for watching Her Take. If you like the show, can you help us out by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification button, sharing, commenting, joining the conversation? It helps us out a ton with the algorithm. We appreciate you.